In a moment, I'm going to reveal the result of my Game of the Year poll. But before then, I'm going to show you a game played by Magnus Carlsen in the World Rapid Play Championship held in Moscow at the end of December. So Carlsen is now World Classical Champion, World Rapid Play Champion and World Blitz Champion. He has the triple crown. Just needs to get the Fischer Random World Championship title back. But anyway, he's doing pretty well. And his play in Moscow in the World Blitz and World Rapid was really, really impressive. He just has that ultimate desire to pull through. You know, he had a few sticky moments in some games, but overall, he was really convincing. And I'd like to show you a really elegant game that he played against Quang Liem from Vietnam. I mean, Lei is a strong grandmaster, but this is the thing about Carlsen. Great players have the ability to make good players look like very average players. So without further ado, Carlsen with the white pieces. And it's a very orthodox opening. Queen's Gambit, and Lei played the Queen's Gambit, accepted, and Carlsen went for e4. It's interesting, you know, we've often seen Carlsen play sidelines in the opening just to sort of get his opponent out of a lot of theory. In fact, I mean, looking at this game is a good example of this. Carlsen actually knows a lot of theory, but he often just chooses to sidestep his opponent's lines. So this is a pretty well-known position. White has a nice space advantage with his pawn on e5, and that can give you some attacking chances later on. But black has managed to get this bishop outside the pawn chain, and also later on should be able to use the d5 square. So it's a real balance here. Most players just castle here, but Carlsen went his own way and played bishop e3. Well, what he's doing is preparing perhaps sometimes to just bring the bishop back, and this pawn, it will be well supported. And another idea is simply to push forward d5. So black could play knight b4 here to spin around to occupy the d5 square, but bishop e7. And both sides castled, and now h3 was played by Ding Liren against Hari Krishna, but Carlsen went with a3, which looks pretty sensible, just to take away the b4 square so that now knight b4 is no longer possible. Knight a5, of course. White should not allow this bishop to be taken by the knight. And Carlsen just drops back to c2. You could play bishop a2 here, actually. But bishop c2 is a very interesting move. Now, just going by very strict positional considerations, one might imagine this is some kind of slight error, because after the exchange, black has somehow greater control over d5 on the light square. But actually matters aren't so clear. For example, if this knight comes in, then knight takes knight. Now if queen takes, then queen takes pawn, attacks two pieces and takes pawn, looks good for white. And if pawn takes knight, then white has this very nice 4-3 kingside pawn majority, which should allow white to get some kind of attack later, perhaps even straight away, bringing the knight back and then f4. And what about just waiting? Let's say h6. Well, white will play rook d1. It's possible later on, perhaps, to bring this rook up and, well, put these pieces back and attack along the third rank with the rook. It's quite possible to spin this knight round to e4, for example. So black can use the d5 square, but white will use the e4 square as well. And I think it gives white a very clear strategic plan to attack on the king side, actually. So bishop c2 just played, but I think this is a really important moment in the game. I think black should exchange on c2, or perhaps drop the bishop back to g6. But queen d7 is a clear mistake. Now, this was a rapid play game, and you know, they're just out of the opening, probably moving fairly quickly, but this is a clear error. Carlsen exchanged on f5 and just played d5. And at first it looks as though black has a little bit of piece play here and has some kind of compensation for white's big pawn centre. But Carlsen just took the knight here. The knight recaptured, and then queen b3. And it soon transpired that black really can't chip away at white's pawns in the middle at all. And white just dominates. And the reason I love this game is because I love the symmetry here. It's such an elegant position that Carlsen has achieved. So the rook's in the middle, supporting those pawns in the middle, with the knights classically placed in the centre. It's the perfect position. And black simply can't chip away at those pawns. I mean, there's always a potential for white to break through with e6, getting through to the king. And if c6, well, sometimes e6 will work, but probably just d6. And those pawns just look incredible. And obviously f6 is out of the question as well for black. So for the moment, Lei just waits. He plays g6. And that means that at least he can step up with the king and get his king away from the queen on this diagonal. But the king isn't completely safe on g7, as we're about to see. So what do you do when you have a wonderful centre like this? Well, of course, it could be possible to break straight away with e6. It can't be bad, but actually black can't do anything here, so why not just improve things first? h4. We can use this h-pawn creatively. Well, it's pretty classical chess. Before everyone says, oh yeah, the influence of AlphaZero. People were pushing rook's pawns long before AlphaZero came along. I can assure you, this is pretty standard stuff. Let's just advance this and see how far we get. King g7 steps out of this diagonal, and h5. And this h-pawn could be pretty useful. Okay, still no clear breakthrough yet. So what do we do? Well, the queen has done its job on this side of the board, supporting the pawn on d5. But looking at the king side, yeah, only the king there, no minor pieces around the king. So let's just bring that queen over to the king side and see how far we get. So a nice little shuffle from the queen, and it's ready perhaps to support this pawn, perhaps to come in on one of these squares. So for example, well, what happens if black blocks that pawn? Well, now we can break through, because that h-pawn has just created another little weakness on the king side. This didn't happen. There you go. Once we take here, then the queen will step up, the knight will come in, and f5 will drop. I mean, well, obviously that can't be taken anyway because of knight e5. But I mean, this is just a horrific position for black. f5 is just going to drop here. So we can see how useful it is just to get that h-pawn up the board. Queen e7 played, and now queen f4. The queen steps over, interaction on the king side, knight d7, and again, you know, you could probably break through with e6 or d6 here, but Carlsen makes sure that everything is perfect first. b4, really nice move. So he's tactically aware. Now, if that pawn is taken, okay, let's throw it, now check first, and then d6. Attacking the queen, and that breaks the communication here, so white just wins a bishop. Very nice. So after b4, that knocks the bishop back. Let's give a check. And now once everything is perfect, we've knocked that bishop into a worse position. Now we'll play d6. And this is completely winning. There is absolutely no defense here. Let's see, well, basically that pawn has made room for the knight to enter the game. If queen e6, let's just have a quick look at this, then the knight will come in. And after this, we take. And then queen d4, that's a very elegant switch of the queen again, threatening the knight on b6 and also threatening to either take here or advance, followed by queen g7. What a beautiful double attack. So d6 just played, the queen dropped back, and now again lots of good moves here, but e6 is absolutely decisive. That was taken, and we take here. That's supported by the queen. The rook shuffles to the side, and rook takes knight. So that's an extra piece, and the game ended like this. Takes. And knight d5. That was the final move of the game, exploiting this pin, attacking the queen, attacking this bishop. Game over. What an utter crush. So there we go. Carlsen in imperious form at the World Rapid and World Blitz. And I have to announce that Magnus Carlsen was also the winner of the Game of the Year. Thank you to everyone that took part, everyone who voted. Well, first of all, thanks for your nominations as well. I made a few suggestions, but I included some of your suggestions as well. So there were 5 games that you were voting on. There were a total of 1,234 votes. That is absolutely superb. The winner was the game between Karyakin and Carlsen from Shamkir, where Carlsen played this Sveshnikov and landed this octopus knight on d3. It was a wonderful pawn sacrifice and a beautifully played attack. So that was the winner, clear winner, with 36% of the votes cast. In second place, Dubov against Giri with 26%, then Ding against Giri 15%, Firuzia against Karthikeyan 14%, and then Rajabov against Vidit 9%. So any of these games would have been worthy winners, but you decided that the Carlsen game was the best of those 5. I have to say, I wouldn't have voted that as my best game. Of those 5, I would probably have voted with the Dubov game. I thought this idea of castling queenside was absolutely spectacular, really original, beautifully calculated game. Just extraordinary. I think just really original. And my next favourite was the Ding Giri game, which I thought was beautiful strategic performance, backed up by great tactics and culminating with a lethal attack against Giri's king. Those were my 2 favourite games, Dubov and Ding. But there you go. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and once again, thank you everyone for taking part. If you want to see that game again, of course, do check out my video of the Karyakin Carlsen game. You'll find it down there in the video description. You'll probably find it up there if you click on the I button up there as well. So Tata Steel tournament coming up. Look out for that, and don't forget, if you want to support us, do check out patreon.com and also PayPal as well, and you'll find links to those in the video description down there. Thanks very much for watching. Bye now.